Hello. Good afternoon.
Pick that step up, folks. We are back. Happy hour number 11, or as that we'll call it, Hawk Tui happy hour. Are you tired of that meme yet, intern Noe, the pro?
I probably got a couple more days and I'll be tired of it.
I got to admit, I was out of town, and we drove, so we had a lot of time on the road both ways, and I think maybe it might be, I'm had a birthday this past week, and so maybe I've reached that age limit where I got to admit, after about a half a day of it, I was like, okay, this is getting a little tiresome. But then we're going to save these for later. We're not going to talk about these tonight. Then you pulled out some of the best fantasy football names that will be contributed to, So that got me back into it a little bit. So I do appreciate you doing that. That really got me into it. Anyway, I am Terry Bennett. This is Intern Noe the Pro, and this is happy hour number 11 for OutDrank The Coverage here on L4 Media. You can find us on Facebook. Just type in OutDrank The Coverage. Find us on YouTube. Just type in L4 Media Company. We have so many other shows that are not just OutDrank The Coverage, but that's what we're going to talk about today. And how are you doing today, buddy? What are you drinking?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. Today I am drinking Weller. It's a straight bourbon. It's their special reserve, which is the second grain is wheat, which is kind of unique to a lot of I think Weller was one of the first distilleries. Well, it's really Buffalo Trace, but one of the first distillers to use wheat as a second grain. Typically it's rye.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes it smoother. Rye has a bit of a spice, so it's about a bunch of honey and caramel flavors you get from this. It's pretty good. It's really hard to get in Texas. Easy to get in Kentucky, obviously. So whenever I can find it, I get it. Anyway, how are you doing, sir? And what are you drinking?
I am good. I am tired. Again, we were gone for last week, and
happy birthday!
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. We had a blast in New Orleans. Being gone, we had people come in and do some things. We're renovating the house and the studio. In fact, here soon, the studio is going to look completely different, folks, and I'm excited about that. It's the one thing. Everything else in my life outside of when college football finally comes out here in about a month on PlayStation 5, that and my studio being renovated are the two things I'm very impatient about. I'm so ready to get this done. You've heard the idea. I think you're on board with it. It's going to be a blast, but man, it's getting there. It's getting through all the crap of everything else we're doing. I'm just so tired. And so with that, I'm going to help myself to sleep tonight with a little bit of vodka. And unfortunately, this is not good night loving. I went to so I forgot we recorded a show Friday before I left. And so I thought I had like a half a bottle of vodka left. Realized this afternoon, oh crap, I better go get some. I get there and I left my wallet, but luckily I had a $20 bill that my dad gave me because my dad will not let me buy dinner whenever we're with family. And I tried to buy pizza the other night when we were in town. We went by to see my parents on the way back, and he snuck a 20 to Jenny, which actually turned out to help, but I had to buy some taco. I got to admit, I've missed you, old friend, but I also haven't drank you, so hang on.
Cheers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God, that does taste like ass. I got to tell you, man, I switched over to I guess I've been drinking Goodnight Loving since, Super Bowl, about that time. And I have not really touched Taka since then. And I can taste the crap now. I'm still going to drink it. Don't get me wrong. And it's going to be fun. But now I understand why my fiance keeps telling me, why do you drink that swill? But anyway, so this is Random Happy Hour.
Looking forward to it.
4,000 people are in here so far. We appreciate that.
Hello.
We were going to have, this was actually going to be one of those, I thought we were going to get to really just stretch our legs out, and we still are. But hang on. I still have a little bit of that cough left, man. That's one thing you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago. When you get older, a simple cold will just linger for like 2 extra weeks than it used to. But anyway,
we did a couple of shows before you went out of town.
Yeah.
And yeah, you were pretty raspy there with the voice.
I was actually surprised that the Friday shows that we did. And by the way, one of them is up on our Patreon. Let me go ahead and get that over here. I put up the Point Blank, the Any Given Sunday show, which I think was a wonderful show. That's our second official Bad Movies in a Drink episode. And I really, really thought that as great as the Roadhouse one was, and I love doing the Roadhouse one, I really enjoyed doing this one. We went for like 2 hours, and we could have gone another hour easily. That's one of those things that I was listening back to it on the way down to New Orleans, and I'm like, man, we left out so much, but that's just that movie has so much packed. But anyway, that's up on Patreon. Our number 2 rival, Washington, that will go up next week. And then, of course, next month we will record our number 1 rival for the Dallas Cowboys. You can pretty much guess if you just go look at the other 4. And then we're also going to do our 90s honorable mention show, because like the 70s, there were so many teams that could at least called the Dallas Cowboys a rival, even if Dallas didn't really see it that way, or the fans. We're going to have fun talking about that. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, I thought tonight we were going to be able to stretch our legs out. And then here comes it's June. There's nothing else going on in the NFL. and I will say this, the guy that broke the rumor, Tyler Dunn, I think is his name. He wrote a really good piece that I actually sent you in the offseason about the Buffalo Bills coaching situation and how behind the scenes, some people said it's different. And here's the difference on that one. He actually talked to people who gave their name. There was a couple people that said, off the record, but he talked to people who gave their name and said this is what was going on. The rumor today is supposedly Mike McCarthy is fed up and frustrated with Jerry Jones. Very vague. One report was, it's because of his contract extension. The other one was, he just doesn't like the direction of the team. You know what? Those all may be very well true and not. I don't know. I will say this. I have learned that anything that doesn't have a name connected to it when it comes to Dallas is usually wrong. Because for all the talk about Jerry and how crazy it is and whatever, they run a pretty tight ship as far as leaks. You don't really get the leaks that you might have gotten 20 years ago when it was 2000 and 2002 and things like that. I just don't know how much I believe it.
When I heard you when you told me this story, the first thing I thought about was, one, no crap. You knew you were in a lame duck situation, Mike McCarthy. This is make it or don't.
You're approaching this as not that you necessarily believe it, but you're just approaching it as, okay, he said this. This is my view if that's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, this could have been fabricated, which it probably is. But if you think about it, if I were in Mike McCarthy's shoes, knowing the Cowboys' history, knowing what you came in expecting to do, knowing the talent you have, knowing the talent you've lost as well, you should have already made it you should have already made it to the conference championship game. You should have made it to the Super Bowl with this team, especially in 2022 and 2023, when the talent of the NFC, as far as teams go, was maybe 4 or 5 teams that were considered Super Bowl worthy.
Yeah.
It was prime years to do it, and they just fumbled it. They had a 2 seed, lost to the Packers in the wild card round. Was a wild card, ended Tom Brady's career 2 years ago. The offense just could not score a touchdown, and I don't like the defense played great. It was Purdy's worst game as a rookie that season, and they just fumbled it. So it's just going to be missed opportunities. There's going to be a lot of what ifs with this early 2020s Dallas team, and he's at the forefront. And if I was in his shoes, I would be considering, hey, you know what? Ownership has a point. I need to get to the conference championship minimum this season.
Yeah, I think.
Or else.
I know that. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Well, hello there. My window's open and somebody's walking the dog. How you doing? Oh, that's a guy. Never mind. But no. So my whole thing about that is I think what people misunderstood the all in from Jerry And I'm not saying I knew it in the moment. I actually kind of thought, okay, he's actually going to at least try and maybe do a Rams and, screw it. We're going to kill ourselves on the cap for 2 years and then we'll figure it out. But it sounds like more like now it's all in, meaning this is it. Like, prove to me this year that you can do something. Give me a reason to keep you. Give me a reason to keep Dak. Give me a reason to re-sign CD. And now some people say, well, they're taking things away from him, and so that hurts him. My whole thing is we all bitch about this roster when they lose in the first round of the playoffs. And so re-signing all those same guys, does that not just literally put you right back in that same spot where, okay, we're going to do it again? Now, we can make the argument, did they replace them with better talent? I don't know. I don't know if Tyler Guyton will ever be the tackle that Tyron Smith is, but at least right now, we probably will get him for 17 games. That's big. I'm still concerned about the running back position. I will straight up admit that. I'm still concerned about the defensive tackle position. Everywhere else, I still think Dallas is perfectly fine.
Yeah, the good thing with Tyler Guyton is he's 13 years younger than Tyron Smith. I'm not sure the age difference. I know it's more than a decade. And he is healthy, which Tyron Smith is not. And the Jets paid $20 million for Tyron Smith. Cowboys should not. So I'm okay with that part. Running back goes, I mean, this is late June. Training camp's going to be hitting up pretty soon. Got our first preseason game in early August. So it's fast approaching, and there's really no answer right now to the running back position. It looks like it's going to be a three-man rotation with Freeman, Dowdle, and Zeke. I'm not sure if that's going to be great, but I just don't know what Dowdle will do in an expanded role.
I still feel like we all know somebody will not make a roster. An NFL veteran running back with legs that still has a little bit of pop will not make a roster. I still could see them bringing Dalvin Cook in camp.
Yeah.
Get a couple weeks of Rico, and you're like, that's not what we really don't. That we need more. But I still, and maybe I'm just super crossing my fingers, but I still feel like there's going to be a running back that's available. But I also feel like maybe we're going to just finally be like, you know what? Screw it. Dak Prescott was number 2 in the MVP voting last year, put up a hell of a year. Everybody's worried about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's going to be there when it comes time. I'm actually fine with any veteran wanting a new contract holding out over OTAs, because we all remember what happened to Sean Lee in an OTA. So I have no problem with him sitting down. That's not a bad thing, folks. I still feel like the wide receiver core is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, at least we'll have CeeDee Lamb. I don't think the 49ers are going to get Brandon Ayuk. So,
yeah,
at least we got that.
It feels like the guy that they drafted might be Brandon Ayuk with a little bit more quickness. I thought at first that was a mistake draft. Like, well, you reached. Like, he's going to be good. You reach. And we're talking about, what's his name? Ricky Pearsall? Is that his name? I can't remember his name. The wide receiver from Florida. Yeah. But, man, looking at the film and everything, he literally is that guy. I'll go ahead and say it because he's white. Everybody's like, oh, he's the next Julian Edelman. He could very well be. And in that system, San Francisco's showing that's what you do. They're going to treat wide receivers like everybody else treats running backs. They're going to keep one big one, and then they're just going to run through everybody else because they believe the system makes the guy. We're going to find out if that's true or not. And by the way, if Brandon Ayuk ends up cut, that's a perfect type of guy Dallas can pick up, because you're going to get him cheap, get him on a 1-year prove-it deal, and then you can start to do that running game where you're not just relying on running backs to run plays.
Right now, the 49ers are not doing a good job of increasing trade value because they're sending a message, kind of like what happened with the Bears and Justin Fields. They're sending a message that they want to get rid of Ayuk without saying it. But the longer this is going on, his value is going to decrease, just like with Justin Fields.
That's a good one.
And it was Ricky Pearsall. I mean, hey, we could talk about the race aspect here, but they have the best running back in football, and he's not black.
We're still getting comment bombed. This video is my daily source of inspiration, says Muhammad. Sadeh Cartal 1903, I'm always impressed by your content. Mert V. Linder Deinze, I think he used to play for the Dutch soccer team. You're changing the game, guys. Yes, we are. I don't know where these have come from, but we do appreciate the robot. It just tells us we must be making some waves if we're getting robots filling the need to fill out our thing. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Yeah, we're going to see if how San Francisco is able to manipulate the cap. Are you going to be able to still be decent even when you might take a step back talent-wise because of cap things? And I think this is where Dallas is. And I'll say this, I don't have a problem with what Dallas is doing, because by all accounts, if we don't at least see either a NFC title game, or at worst, you have to go on the road on the division round and you play a really good game and, you win or you lose 31-28 and everybody plays well. It's just one of those games you loses. Any other action but those two, well, outside, of course, winning the Super Bowl, any of those actions, I think you're cleaning house anyway. So I have no problem with that, because if you're going to clean house, you might as well get rid of Dak, CD. I would keep Micah and you go from there, or you keep CD but I think you can find, and I'm not trying to say other people are as good as CD. I think you can find a really good number one wide receiver over a player like Micah Parsons, who is not only really good, but I mean, he is right now started off as maybe one of the best defensive players stat wise, in the history of the game. And then people, but the playoffs, that's fine. We don't do that with defensive linemen. If we're going to start doing that, then you might as well just stop watching sports, because you're only going to be happy if your team wins the Super Bowl. And we've had that conversation before. But anyway, so I have no problem with what Jerry's doing.
I don't either. But if this story is true, I'm kind of shocked at how naive Mike McCarthy is. I don't think it's true, but if it is, I am shocked, because, I mean, the writing's on the wall. You knew what you were coming into. You've already won a Super Bowl. This is year 5 for you. You know what the expectation is. You have a guy that was second in the MVP voting, and Prescott.
Yeah.
You have you were the number 2 seed last season. Other teams are starting to get better. Detroit's getting really good. San Francisco's still there. Philadelphia, they made a bunch of changes personnel-wise that made them back to being contenders. Even like the lower teams like the Bears and the Giants and Washington, they've made a lot of changes that might make them somewhat competitive this season. So you got to start winning these games that you need to, like conference championship, or tear it down. I know you said a competitive divisional game loss, but I mean, to me, that's already happened for the Cowboys for several years in the last 15. So I don't even think that's going to be enough.
Well, again, that's a very narrow chance, and it would have to work for me. This is, again, when you're driving down to, I love driving, and I love driving New Orleans. Get to go through some family and just old places that I love, but you have a lot of time to think. And so I took my phone. I was just writing notes down, and the way I see that happening, how you survive and lose in a division round, you have to be on the road. You have to be playing a team that, like a San Francisco or somebody that they're going to probably go to the Super Bowl, and you have to have had like Dak's out for 5 or 6 games, or they start crappy, where they're like 10-7, 9-8, sneak into the playoffs, then win that first game, on the road in the wild card round, then go on the road again and you lose, like I said, 31-28, 28-24, a good game. You don't have somebody just spitting the bit. It's just, just a really good game that you lose. That's how it's very narrow there. The biggest one is title game.
So you are dating yourself, because I know you're referencing the 91 Cowboys, except the divisional game was actually competitive.
Yeah, it was. Well, for a minute. You're talking about with Detroit?
Well,
for a minute.
In your hypothetical 2024 season.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
It's basically a carbon copy of the 91 Cowboys, except in your scenario, the 2024 Cowboys are going to lose a competitive divisional game, whereas the 91 Cowboys got slaughtered.
Now, again, that's very narrow, though, because even then you're still going to have we're going to have to re-sign Dak. We're going to have to re-sign CD. We're going to have to re-sign Micah. Maybe this is just it no matter what. Maybe even if they win a Super Bowl, I could actually see if they win a Super Bowl, Jerry saying, I'm out. Thank y'all. Steven taking over and Steven going, hey, that's great. We won a Super Bowl. Let's tear it all down. We're going to rebuild from now. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. As Cowboy fans, you cannot be mad when they go 12-5 and don't win go to the title game and re-sign everybody, and then be mad when they don't go to the title game but don't re-sign everybody. You can't have it both ways. You have to pick which lane you're going to do. And boy, it really feels like, because they've got Diggs signed. They've got Bland. He still has 3 more years. They've got Gotten for 5 years. They've got Tyler Smith for 4 more years. They've got a new center now. I mean, it really feels like there's some quiet little, hey, we're about to tear this down on the fly type of thing. Maybe have one bad season in 2025 but be ready to go from there.
I really think if they win, no, I didn't want to put that out there. Okay. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. If they actually do the unthinkable and actually win the Super Bowl,
yeah,
they probably will. There will be changes. No, I think there'll be changes no matter what. It's already set up to be where there's going to be a lot of changes because Jerry Jones, he'll be 82 this season. His son is basically running the operations. Him and Will McClay, but they have a lot of high-priced players, especially at quarterback and receiver. And soon to be defensive or edge rusher. Sorry, that's the proper term. I don't know what they're going to do going forward because they have to build a competitive team. They have to build depth. They got Mike Zimmer as defensive coordinator. You got to have some talent for him to use. He's a great coordinator. You just got to make sure you have the talent around him to let him do his thing. I don't know what they really are going to do. To me, this season has as big a question mark as 2016, which I don't know if that's a good thing because 2016 ended up being great, but for reasons I didn't foresee.
Yeah.
2024, I just don't believe in allocating that much of a percentage of your cap to a quarterback. I know that's the most important position, but if you do that and then you just win the division and lose in the wild card round, then what's the point? Like, you're not really building a team that can actually win. You're just building a team that can get you into the playoffs. And I don't think that's enough.
Well, and let's be honest, no matter what, no matter if they win a Super Bowl or not, unless 1 or 2 of the 3 are willing to take some kind of hometown discount, I don't think you have the big 3 of Parsons, Lamb, and Dak on this team. All 3 of them passed this year. And
the current greatest quarterback, Tom Brady, took a hometown discount with the Patriots. And the next, claim to the throne, Patrick Mahomes, has also taken a hometown discount. He's still getting paid a lot, but his endorsements put him through the roof. That's another quality of an all-time great quarterback. And if Dak Prescott wants to be up in that, considered in that era, that environment of top-tier athletes, then he's going to have to take a hometown discount because the Cowboys aren't going to be able to afford a $60 million quarterback. I'll just say that and still be competitive.
And you bring up a good point. And you and I, we're very pro players. We're very pro workers. I'm very much, hey, you get your bag. But can you make the case that Dak got his bag? He's been paid over $100 million. I mean, and if he decides that, no, I want to be the top paid quarterback, I'm not going to fault him, but I'm also going to say, okay, now you reap what you sow on that one. If that's what you want to be, then that's fine. Go be it. Whether it be with Dallas or anybody else, go be it. But also understand you are hamstringing yourself at that point.
Yeah. You, as an organization, and I know your main goal is to earn as much money as possible, which is the Cowboys have done 20,000-fold. But if you're really trying to win a Super Bowl, why would you allocate so much of your you want to diversify? This is investment 101. You got to diversify. You can't just allocate most of your resources to one player. A team is 53. You got to build that entire roster up. And there's a lot of unsung heroes on Super Bowl champions. You don't just need the quarterback. You need everybody else. And I really don't feel that allocating $60 million plus to a quarterback, which according to this year's cap will be about 25% of your cap space. I just don't think that's, and as an investor, that is not very sound.
And I do want to finish off the McCarthy. I don't think the thing about Mike McCarthy is truly true.
Agreed.
Again, everybody always talks about the Jerry Jones, Johnny Manziel, and the story is that Steven had to hold him down, and that got reported as true. And Jerry and Steven kind of played into that with a little wink and nod. But what people don't understand is the guy that wrote that, Jim Dent, was not in the draft room. That was literally him saying, oh, I could see Jerry right now with Manziel available, him going, wanting to pick and Steven having to hold him down. And people ran with that like it was 100% true. I could see a conversation where an ex-Cowboy staffer says something to the effect of, oh, man, I bet Mike is so pissed right now. And the writer going, you think he is? Oh, yeah, he's got to be, man. Look, I mean, they're taking everybody away. They haven't signed. And the writer going, okay, hey, I'll go with that. And look, I as somebody who's worked in media, I understand unnamed sources, but one unnamed source doesn't do it for me. I've got to have multiple unnamed sources. One guy, that dude might just be pissed at Mike, or he might just be pissed at Jerry, or hell, he might be working for a friend of his who's a coach who would love to be a Dallas head coach. Is like, hey, float that out and let's get this going. People will be surprised. Read John Gruden's email. You'd be surprised what the hell coaches talk about. But speaking of all that about the, where did that not work? Did that not work? I had to do it again. Oh, here we go. Speaking of quarterbacks, it came out this week that NFL owners have discussed a quarterback salary cap. Now, Trevor Lawrence just got paid. Well, you know about getting the bag as he reset the market, signing a 5-year, $275 million contract. That's an annual contract of annual salary of $55 million. Now, to be fair, he will probably only play 3 years of that because either they'll tear it up and pay him more or they'll cut him. But this goes along to what you and I have talked about, Noe. I see a day where either the quarterbacks have their own cap like this, or as you and I have talked about, just do the NBA Larry Wright birds and make it for quarterbacks.
I mean, I guess you can do that. I don't know if I'm a big proponent of this. I would just say increase the cap, but it's just only going to increase salary. So I'm not sure if there's an end in sight in that regard.
So why do you have a problem with a quarterback only cap? What's the issue with you for that? Because I like that idea.
It's already assuming that the quarterback is the most important position on your team. You're already designating that person as way more superior to everybody else. I just feel it's not even a thing I would quantify. I just feel that players in the locker room are going to have resentment toward that their teammate who they need to win a Super Bowl, to win games with. And I just feel that I just don't think it's necessary. This is a team sport. This is to me, it's the most team sport in all of professional sports. I know a lot of people would give soccer the nod there, but to me, it's football. Each player, it's just a cog in a machine. And if one messes up, the whole team fails. So I love it for that. So that's a team sport. I think you just keep it the way it is. The price for a quarterback is way too high right now, and I just think that given Trevor Lawrence, 5 years, 275, just giving him a pat on the back and saying, "Oh, you were just injured last year. I know that's not you."
That blows my mind, dude. And yes, he made a playoffs, and yes, he won a playoff game. But again, this is why it's like pitching nowadays. We've all realized, even though I still love wins and losses for pitchers, we realize that's a really stupid thing when you really break it down. It's the same thing with marking a 1 win for Trevor Lawrence in a playoff game when it was the LA Chargers who literally threw up on themselves. And I'm not saying he played bad in that second half, but I mean, again, at any time, if the Chargers score on one more drive, they win the game. Yeah. And also, I still have yet to see Trevor Lawrence look like a stud NFL quarterback. And he was supposed to be, and this is why it's weird, because I really am believing in Caleb Williams. I do think Caleb Williams might be one of those guys that, like Patrick Mahomes, we look back 5 years ago, man, that dude has changed the game. But we heard that with Trevor Lawrence, and he has looked like an above average Okay, quarterback. And yet he just got $55 million a year.
To Lawrence's defense, I don't think any quarterback coming into year one of the NFL is in a better position to succeed than Caleb Williams is for the Bears. He got upgraded on offense, line, receivers, running back. That Chicago offense is loaded. They just needed a quarterback to dink and dunk. And I think they got their guy in Caleb Williams. I think they're going to be really good this year. You and I thought last season they win 7 games, and it wins 7 games. I think double-digit wins, and maybe chasing the division crown is their height for this season. Lawrence didn't have the best shake his rookie year. He had Urban Myers as head coach,
and I agree with that. That year, and maybe even the development of him gets a little bit of an asterisk. But we're talking year 4 now.
We're going into year 4. Yes,
this should be the year that we see Trevor Lawrence. He's got a good team and he's got a good offense.
This is year 3 under Doug Peterson. They won the division 2 years ago. They did a collapse last season, but a lot of that's attributed to Lawrence being not in the best, not 100% healthy. So we just have to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's still young. He's still 24, very mobile for his size. So yeah, we'll see what happens this season. They do need to get to double-digit wins and make the playoffs with that talent on their team. Yeah, I mean they lost Calvin Ridley, but I wouldn't say that's the biggest loss for them.
Yeah, I'm betting it's not. Get it? Betting? Okay, I'll see myself out. Never mind. Anyway,
that is the NFL was hit with it, but now NBA is being hit with that even more. So that's something I want to see if it's gonna. I mean, baseball this year as well. I'm kind of seeing if it's going to continue or the players are going to start scaling back on that.
Oh, on betting?
Yeah.
They're going to scale back. And by the way, folks, people are not getting caught because betting is now being advertised and betting is legal. People are getting caught because they were doing this before, but because it wasn't legal and because casinos and betting sites and bookies weren't looking for players to be, now it can be found out. So again, that's why I say in 5 years, we're going to realize that betting being legal is the best thing that's happened. Now, I will agree, Jesus Christ, tone down the advertising. But I will say this, for all those YouTube channels that you and I watch and I love that say the same thing, then 5 seconds later go, this is brought to you by DraftKings. Don't talk out both sides of your mouth. By the way, DraftKings, we will happily advertise you. So don't talk out your mouth when you're going to do that. I have no problem with betting. Yeah. Betting has always been around sports. Betting, they always say, in the world of competition, day one, competition began. 2 hours later, betting began. Because that's just what people do, whether it be money, whether it just be whatever it be. Now, I will go back to the quarterback thing. I totally disagree with you. First off, I think football is the only sport where you are taught from the very beginning there is one position that is held above everybody else, and you just know that. You just know that as a player. Defensive ends know that as a player. Linebackers, wide receivers, running backs, all of them know that the quarterback is considered, and they're the biggest thing, and whether they win or lose, all that. So I don't think the locker room thing is an issue because it would have always been. Hell, if there was ever a time to have had that issue, it would have been the Cowboys locker room when Emmitt Smith had to beg and had to hold out to prove his worth. And then Jerry Jones was giving Troy Aikman $50 million for a 6-year deal and we can all make the case that you have to pick one or the other to lead your team back then. Who would have been? It'd have been Emmitt Smith. So I don't think players will have an issue with that, especially if you assign them a different salary cap, because then that allows those players to then make more money. Because then Jerry Jones can't tell Lamb, I'd love to pay you, but I got to pay Dak. Well, no, you're paying Dak on the quarterback scale. Pay me on the regular scale. And I still think they should just do it as a Larry Bird rights, but they won't, because that will explode the quarterback salaries. Because that's where the NBA salaries have exploded, is literally because of the Larry Bird rights. Because you can max out a dude as much money as you want to pay him, as long as you've had him for at least a calendar year or part of a Larry Bird rights trade, and that allows you to just blow the salaries up. So it's going to be interesting. Something's got to be done. Or
Is the
quarterbacks are going
is hey, is the best position or is the best job in professional sports a third string center?
yeah, because you're talking about the NBA, right? Because
Yes.
you're going to get 5 million 72. I mean, a 5 year $72 million deal if you're young enough. If you're older, you might get only a 2 year deal, but because you're older, if you're like,
Al
what's his,
Horford.
Wolford or the Lopez brothers or Haslin down in Miami, any of those guys. I mean, I love them, but they were getting paid 1 year, 30 million to play 5 minutes a game. And the weird thing is nobody says boo about that. Nobody cares about that. I still think we need to go back to the worst thing that happened to players was when courts decided that, yeah, owners could talk about their salaries in the paper. I don't like that. I've never understood why we do that. Well, I know why the owners did it because they tried to shame the players. We really should go back to where we don't know crap about that. I don't care how much a player makes unless there's a hard cap. That's the only reason I'm telling Dak, hey, maybe you don't take the 60 million. Hey, what's wrong with taking 30 million? You take 30 million, you've already made 100. I guarantee you, if he took 30 million, Jerry Jones and them would sign him to a 5 year, $130 million deal, but they won't do that. Agents won't allow that because it'll look bad.
I mean, this is a capitalist country. You got to make the most money you can. These are their best years. These are where they're going to earn their most money for the most part. Now, some of these guys will pull a Roger Staubach and get nickels and dimes as a pro, but then become a $1 billion real estate investor post career. But a lot of these guys are going to just make most of their money during their career and just sit on investments that earn them 6 figures, maybe even 7 figures for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
That is the way it is. So they're going to just try to maximize it. I don't blame players for wanting to get the most money they can possibly get.
Nope.
I'm okay with your motives, but as a fan of the Cowboys, I want Super Bowls.
Well,
and I don't want players that also want Super Bowls, like Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, who took a discount, like Tom Brady in years past with the Patriots, and later on with the Buccaneers, taking a hometown discount just to get the team better because that's what he wants. That I want players like that on my team.
Well, but you have to be honest. You have to look at the social dynamics of all that. Why did Tom Brady do that? Because he had at the time a $1 billion wife.
Yeah.
Why did Patrick Mahomes do that? Because Patrick Mahomes grew up with a baseball dad and grew up very well, not balls out rich, but where he grew up, White House, Texas, is not. He wasn't poor. He lived comfortably. Dak lived with a family that struggled, and I get that. And I agree with you. Make all you want, but you also have to then accept the criticism of you're taking away talent from your team because you wanted that extra 10 million a year. And again, I'm fine with that, but you can't run and hide and be like, oh no, you can't. Like I heard somebody say there, and again, this was off the record a few years ago when they were talking to a quarterback, and they were like, well, it's not my job to build the team. It's my job to get paid. Yes, but your pay in a hard cap directly affects that. So you can't bitch at the general manager because he doesn't put the talent around you when you're taking up 46% of the cap or 56% or 60, whatever it turns out to be. And it's frustrating because in a way this is fun to talk about, but also I hate talking money with this crap. I just want to talk football, and again, I understand it's June and we're just finding things to talk about at this point when it comes to NFL. And, we've still got about 3.5 weeks till camp start opening up. And then we'll be able to start actually talking on the field. Speaking of on the field, hey, let's talk a little Texas Rangers, brother. Man, you want to talk about them and the Astros. Both go into these series with teams that are better than them. And both of them, the Astros have kind of started at least treading water for a while. Texas looked like they were Houston a month ago. It looked like Texas was ready to lose 10 out of the next 13 type. And both of them pull off sweeps. And more importantly, both of them did it impressively. I mean, and I know the Royals had kind of started sliding back. They had a struggle against the Dodgers last week, but still 2 shutouts. Max Scherzer looked really good on Sunday. Wyatt Langford is starting to wake up. You're starting to see the rookie of the year guy that everybody thought he was. And did we not say his injury might have been the best thing for him? Because he wasn't looking overpowered early, but he wasn't getting hits. This allowed him to kind of sit and watch. and be a little bit more patient. And all of a sudden, the Rangers are looking really good.
You know, both the Rangers and Astros had injury issues going into this season. The Rangers responded better to start the season than Houston did. But as Houston's starting to get healthier, you're starting to see them win. I think they're on a 5-game winning streak right now. Rangers swept a really good Royals team. Now, granted, these are the Royals. They lost 106 games last year. We don't know just how good they really are. We know the financial commitment that was given to Bobby Witt Jr. He's looking like an MVP candidate this year. I don't know if y'all been following stats and just the season, but it's really the AL MVP is really between Aaron Judge and him, so to speak. Judge will probably win it because he's just having a ridiculous season. But Bobby Witt Jr. is having, I mean, he's getting hits, stolen bases, average, hit for average, getting home run. He's having a great year. And that was kind of the biggest thing that's changed the Chiefs, Kansas City, the Royals season is his defense. He's been just playing ridiculously great defensively. He's improved so much.
His range, especially, because that was kind of what his weakness had been. And he lost, it looks like, about 5 or 10 pounds. And you know, and it's one of those that you can't really see it until you see him play the game. His lateral movement is so much better. Somebody that played the infield, his movement before at times is just, you get like, dude, you don't step that way. He's figured it out. And what happened was he grew up, he was so good. His fundamentals, you know, that's usually what happens when you have a phenom like that. Their fundamentals are slow to catch up. You're starting to see that. I don't think the Royals are going to last, but I do think they finally have some building blocks. And by the way, a team like the Royals, this is what they're going to do. They're going to be good for a few years, then they're going to lose everybody, and they're going to tear it all down. They're going to have to start back up. We're still seeing if the Astros and the Rangers, how they're going to be in this, you know, where they're at. Astros are now, year 7 of what you'd call a dynasty run? Is this just a bump and they're going to fix it? Or is this the beginning of a slow decline for the Rangers? Was last year the aberration? Is this year the aberration? I think it's a little bit of both. But yeah, the Royals are I think, are going to come back to earth. But it is fun to see them. I always like it when Kansas City's good in baseball.
Me too. They have one of the best uniforms in baseball. They're just young. They have who's going to end up being one of the greatest catchers of all time is Salvador Perez, leading a very young team. Seth Lugo is having a Cy Young type season at pitcher, so they're getting contributions that they weren't really getting last season. And it's become one of the most entertaining and fun divisions, the AL Central, in baseball this season. I loved watching his dad, Bobby Witt, as a pitcher back in the 90s. Rangers were one of the teams. Oakland Athletics were one of the teams. So it's kind of nice seeing him shine, getting a nice contract, and turning that contract into a very all-around type player, kind of a la the late, great Willie Mays, 5-tool player like that.
Man, that was so sad. He died on my birthday.
Died on your birthday, 93 years old. Hey, heart failure, 93 years old. He lived a long life.
Isn't it weird, though? We got Betty White. We were all on that run up to 100, and she didn't make it by a few days. And then Willie Mays, we were all so excited to see him going back to Birmingham to be a part of that. And we'll talk about that in a minute because I think Reggie Jackson might have shocked some people with what he talked about. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But I do want to go back to the Rangers real quick. Now I want to focus on Mays. The issue with the Rangers, and this is going to be the thing that might hurt them going forward, is they didn't take advantage when they were playing crappy teams like the Mets. You know, they lose 2 out of 3. They lose 2 out of 3 to a Giant team that's okay. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Tigers. They lose 2 out of 3 to the Marlins. Oh, no, sorry. They won 2 out of 3 from the Marlins. But now going forward, they start a 3-gamer with the Brewers, then a 3-gamer with the Orioles, then a 3-gamer with the Padres, a 3-gamer with the Rays. The next time you would say they play a team that they should beat will be July 8th when they take on the Angels. So they're going to have to at least go 500. I think if they're within 5 games of 500 at the All-Star break, I'm perfectly happy because this season – Every sport, but baseball is figuring out too. It ain't what you do till the All-Star break. It's what you do after the All-Star break. So if they're within 5 games of 500, I still think they have a chance. But I will still, and my dad hates this. Love you, Dad. I don't care this year. I really don't. I mean, I'm good. Like, as long as they don't just pull a White Sox and go 8-33 on the road like the White Sox have done, as long as they're competitive, this is a mulligan year for me. We'll get back to it next year.
Good point on the post All-Star break run, because that's what the Mavericks basically did this year. I think they went like 22-9 after the All-Star break, or after the trade deadline. They started okay, but they really finished strong, and that kind of carried over.
I can't hear you because my World Championship Texas Rangers shirt is swallowing.
You need to have a Western Conference Championship Mavericks jersey for sure.
You did?
No, you need to have one.
We don't celebrate conference championships. I do miss celebrating divisions. Like, I remember like getting 94, Cowboys NFC East shirts and stuff. I really do wish we get back into an era, and maybe we just never will. I just wish we would get back into an era where you just enjoy the regular season and not, the playoffs. If we're going to do that, let's just play the playoffs. Just fucking flip for your spots and let's go. Because what's the whole point of football? Like, I literally had somebody tell me today, I'll tune in when the playoffs start. Like, why? Like, what's the point of that? Like, you don't know any of the stories of your team. You don't have all the moments of, oh my God, awesome, and oh my God, crap. You and I were talking about this last year. I kind of want to go back to when the Cowboys would actually have to win a game with a field goal a few times a year. Like, it was against the Chargers last year.
Yeah.
God, that's really it, isn't it? That was the only time that their win came down to. There was a couple games where they scored late to make it a 2-score game.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I guess the Charger game was the only one that was a late win.
So last season was an interesting one because the Cowboys would blow out every other team. It ended up being a much easier schedule than it should have been. They ended up
good point.
Yeah, they ended up having like a very cupcake schedule. So their 12 wins were against teams that were not 500, or like in the Eagles case, they were just tanking.
Yeah,
late in the season. So I think they only beat 1 or 2 teams that had a winning record all of last season. And then anytime they played a team that was 500 or better, same as the Cardinals, they would struggle. Or any team that could actually run the ball, they would struggle. So It was just a Jekyll and Hyde season for the Cowboys last year. So yeah, not many close finishes, but speaking of divisions, the one league where divisions are meaningless is the NBA now.
Yep. And they kind of always have been, to be honest with you.
Well, because they changed the rule where if you win your division, in prior years, if you win your division, you get a top 3 seed. Now it doesn't matter. You might get in the playoffs, but they're just going to seed based off a record. And it's because there was a stretch where one of the divisions was just not up to par. Yep. And they would get a 3 seed, but they were 43-39. And I think it was the Northwest division for the Western Conference. I can't remember. But
then we also went in stretches where the whole East was bad.
49, 50 wins will get you the 1 seed in the East 20 years ago.
Yeah. And I would have no problem in the NBA if they stripped away divisions.
They might as well do it.
Yeah, because I mean, even when divisions mattered, you still teams don't hang banners for division champions. That's one of the sports that divisions, like, I couldn't tell you half the time growing up who was in what. I knew the Lakers were in the West, and the Boston's in the East, but like I couldn't tell you who was in the division other than Texas. You always had those 3 are always going to be in the same division. I'd have no problem there if they would tear it down. Let's go ahead and talk. Let's talk. So everybody talks about this. Everybody says that the NHL has the best playoffs. I agree, but I don't think I simply think it's because hockey is still a sport where luck plays so much into it. And I mean, because you look at, tonight, Game 7. Dallas should be there. I still think Dallas, and I'm not just saying because I'm a Stars fan, I think Dallas is the best team in the NHL from top to bottom this year. But as hot as they were, they hit an Oiler team, and when they were ready to make everything, they're about to go up 3-1, they're about to possibly win out and have a week break. The Oilers get a shorthanded, kind of a freaky, goofy goal, and away they went. I love that about the sport. But I don't know if that necessarily means that that's the best team. But you and I have always said championships aren't about who the best team is. Championships are about who wins when they need to win it.
Which might also signify that they are the best team, but it is a good topic to discuss.
So do you think, like this year, the Dallas Mavericks, do you truly feel that they were the best team out of the West this year? Because I still think Denver was a better team.
I think they just got hot. I think all the players and acquisitions kind of finally gelled, and it was good enough to get out of the West, but it was not good enough to beat a Boston team that their core had been there for so long. And I think that's the difference between Boston and Dallas. To be honest with you, I don't think the Mavericks need to do much in the offseason. I think maybe just depth. I know they're going to get rid of Tim Hardaway.
Get rid of Tim Hardaway, re-sign Smith, try to find a 3-and-D guy through a trade and, a sign-in trade or something. And that might be what they do with Hardaway. Because Hardaway has value. He's a solid player. And for whatever reason, whenever he comes to Dallas, because this is his third time through Dallas, he plays well for like 20 games and he just disappears.
And then this season, he only played like 25 minutes per game. So they're not using him as much. He's on the wrong side of 30. It might just be time just for a new environment. I know that's worked wonders for Harrison Barnes in Sacramento. It might work well for Hardaway wherever he goes. The Mavericks just need more time as a team. I think I really honestly, if I break it down from everything I've read, from what I've watched, I think that's the only difference between what Dallas was able to accomplish this season, what Boston was able to accomplish. Boston had just had Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on the same team for so long, and finally it just came together this season. And I really think another year with some consistency, PJ Washington, Lively, Gafford, Kyrie, Luka, I think they have a team that's good enough to win the championship. They just need to gel and just get to know each other better.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm happy for the Celtics because I've always liked Brad Stevens. I feel that I just have a really funny suspicion that he coaches one more time. I don't think he can be done with that. Maybe he is. Maybe he becomes, a guy that just does the strings from behind the scenes. But I kind of feel like we might see a Pat Riley where he does this and then goes somewhere else. Maybe I'm just hoping as a Maverick fan he ends up in Dallas because I've always liked Brad Stevens.
So, yeah, Brad Stevens, he was the head coach for Butler back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. He led Butler to back-to-back championship appearances, a close loss to Duke, and then a little bit of a blowout. It was kind of an ugly game to UConn the next year in 2011. He parlayed that into a successful run as Boston Celtics head coach. He's one of those rare college coaches that could be successful both in college and pros, like, your John Calipari's, Rick Pitino's, who failed. He really succeeded.
You know why? And I'll tell you this. There was a time I loved Rick Pitino. I still do for other reasons.
I do too. And I love what he's going to do at St. John's.
Yes.
They actually had a decent season. They just didn't make the tournament. But next season, you're going to be hearing about him.
Yeah, I agree. But one of the things he does that they didn't is he actually has a system and has a system that works on all levels of basketball. And he doesn't need that power control like they did. I'm not saying what they did was wrong. Jimmy Johnson was the same way. Jimmy Johnson realized that in the NFL, and again, we can talk Jerry Jones, but Jimmy Johnson was never staying in Dallas long because his style doesn't work for that. It works for the 4-year cycle because you can tear a kid down, build him back up, and then he gets tired of the shit. And so that's what happened to Rick, and that's what happened to Calipari. Brad Stevens, all the pro players talk about the biggest surprise when he first stepped in as a coach was he treated them like men. He wasn't trying to do a lot of college rah-rah. And that's the thing, coaches like a Nick Saban. And again, if they choose Drew Brees, maybe his story's different. I don't think it is because those are the guys that need the power over the kids to that fear. And that's not a bad thing. It's just how they coach.
And I think it's probably why Dan Hurley didn't take the Laker job. Or I think that's a good decision for Hurley not to take the Laker job, even though it was a lot of money. Because I think he's one of those coaches where 4 or 5 years is probably the max you want to spend with Hurley. He's so intense. Dan Hurley is the UConn head coach. They won back-to-back men's championships. The Lakers offered him a 6-year, $72 million contract. Turned it down, but he's known for being a very intense head coach. But it's translated into success, like with Jim Harbaugh, what he did at Michigan. But you don't know if that's going to translate into professional success, where you're dealing with grown men.
Well, at least Harbaugh has proven he can win on the professional level.
Yeah, but he was only with the 49ers for 4 seasons. So
yeah.
But that last season they finished 8-8.
So, yeah, but him and the general manager at the time were already
bulky. Yeah,
they were already going at it. That was a burn down season.
And to his credit, Balky didn't do well with Jacksonville when he left the 49ers. So maybe he is a coach that can transfer that into long-term success in the pros.
I agree with you though. I don't think he can. I think he works on that same model. He's not a fear guy, but he's that hard as balls type that's going to take a special breed. That's why we'll either he'll love Justin Herbert and that's his guy, or they're trading him next year.
Well, he's built him up like he wants him long term, but that could be just for great trade value.
The trade value,
and if he ends up getting traded, we're going to circle back to this conversation we're having. And you actually mentioned this off air too, so
I've been big as soon as he got named the head coach and this is nothing against Justin Herbert. I do think that he gets, for some reason, he escapes a lot of the criticism that other quarterbacks get assigned, like a Dak Prescott, where you look at that talent and holy crap, I know they have injuries and Mike Williams was always hurt, but still what is he, year 5 now? Year 6? Year 4?
I think he was a rookie in 2020, so he's
going
into year 5.
So start of year 5. He throws a pretty ball, and he has looked good. But I go back to that Dallas game, the last 2 minutes, and he throws. He gets sacked the one play, and then he throws the interception. If that was Dak Prescott, what would be talked about the very next day on all the ESPN channels? With him, it's but Brandon Staley's a terrible head coach.
Yeah.
Well, Staley didn't throw the interception. Staley had nothing to do with the offense. The offense didn't struggle because of Brandon Staley. The defense struggled because of Brandon Staley. His hubris I think, and by the way, I do think Staley's one of those guys that let him go back to DCing for a while, and maybe he learned some things, and we see a different guy. I'm not going to say he's Bill Belichick, but it reminds me a lot of Cleveland when Bill was there, where a lot of things were right, but at times the hubris of the coaching staff overrid the team, and Bill Belichick figured that out. But anyway, point is, when does Justin Herbert start getting the blame for the Chargers not winning playoff games with a really solid roster?
At some point, he's going to have to start. Hey, it's a different head coach coming in. Let's say they make the playoffs and they lose. Harbaugh has already made it to a Super Bowl.
And a national championship.
And he's won a national championship in college. He already has his medals.
That's a real good point. I didn't even think about that part.
So at some point, you got to start blaming the head coach and the defense and the line and the running game. You got to blame the person that's making the most money on your team at some point.
Did you say Chargers?
Talk about failing upwards. Brandon Staley is an associate or assistant head coach for the 49ers.
I thought you were about to say about me and my helmets.
Hey, Chargers have one of the best looks of all time. It's really hard for them to really fail. I grew up liking the darker color uniforms because that's what I grew up watching. But watching the powder blue and then added the yellow and then watching what they do week to week. I love the all white look too. It almost looks like that's the more conservative look. Don't say the joke. But it does kind of like when they wear the all white, it's still beautiful, but it looks very tame compared to the other color combinations they typically do.
Hot white. It's all right. No, but it's funny. The one jersey that you really like from them, and you're right. It's usually jersey love, uniform love, all that's usually from when you're a kid. That's why there's a bunch of dumbasses from the '90s wanting like the Toronto Raptors to come back, and those jerseys were absolutely hideous. The Houston Rockets look like somebody threw up glitter all over their jersey.
Oh, the Clyde Drexler 94,
Yes,
95.
just no. But I do not like the Chargers uniforms from the Super Bowl '94 team. And it's only because they were too blue. And I get what they were doing. This is my favorite. And it's partly because I'm a kid. But I also I love the white helmet. And as if you don't know, I have every NFL team, but I'm trying to I just realized today when we are getting ready for the show, like my Panthers helmet's like 20 years old and it's starting to peel. So I'll probably replace that, here in the next few weeks. But anyway, this is my favorite. And if you don't know, when I go vacation, if I find a sports store, I've got to buy something. It's just fun to do. So I bought this one. And then I also bought, because we were in New Orleans, I bought a Tulane Green Waves. This is one of my favorite helmets going right now. I love what they've done with their jerseys, all that fun stuff. And then I bought this. And I was going to put this on the show or for the show's table, but I think I'm going to keep it wrapped. Hang on. I bought a NFL standings tracker, NFC on one side, AFC on the other.
I really thought you should have got two of those so you could keep one package and the other to actually use.
Well, okay, so let's go ahead and spoil a little bit. The reason I didn't do that, sorry, I was putting that down. The reason I didn't do that is because the new studio section for OutDrank The Coverage will include a banner for each one of us when you're in studio as well. And if you've seen the show, you can tell right here there's two banners. Behind that's a door into my kitchen. Right there or on the other wall, depending on where it goes, I'm going to put shelves, and we're going to have every mini helmet that I have. That's, when I say mini, I don't mean the micro mini. I mean this size will be on the middle of the table or on the middle of the wall, and we will have the standings correct every episode of OutDrank The Coverage in 2024 going forward. So that's the only reason I didn't do that. I was going to do that, and then I was like, you know what? Now I'm just going to buy one, keep it packaged, because we're going to have all those helmets up on the studio.
The ultimate man cave.
The ultimate man cave that I can write off for taxes. So let's go back to Willie Mays. What is your first thought of Willie Mays?
The catch,
Yeah.
54 World Series. That's one of the most replayed baseball moments of all time. His back was toward home plate. His chest was toward the fence. Makes an over-the-shoulder catch.
At about 400 feet away.
Yeah.
And then people forget about the throw.
Yeah, he threw it back. I forgot if did he get a double play on that?
No, he didn't, but literally anybody, if he doesn't put the throw down, they can tag up and advance the base, even though I think that's the greatest catch in the World Series.
He was 23 at the time, so a 23-year-old phenom in the World Series for the New York Giants, who would later, 4 years later, moved to San Francisco, become the San Francisco Giants.
That was their last World Series win till 2010. Wait, that all rhymed.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter who they beat in 2010, but San Francisco Giants. Yeah.
I also the second best World Series catch was Nelson Cruz 2011 when he climbed the wall and made that catch, and the Rangers won their 7th World Series in a row. Y'all don't remember that?
You must be having that Marvel Cinematic Universe situation where you're in a parallel universe.
You know that, so I'm a video gamer, and every year I get all the sports games. And I always send you every year my MLB, the Rangers win the series. Yep. I started it this year. I'm not going to lie. I got a week in, and I'm like, I don't even need to do this anymore. They finally won.
Hey, I already told you, man. Like, I don't replay the Brett Holt goal, but I will replay Jason Terry's Game 5 shot.
Oh, yeah.
I will replay some of the Cowboys' great moments in the 90s. Michael Irvin's catch in the 92 season Super Bowl against the Bills. But then now I'm going to include Corey Seager's game-tying home run in the bottom of the 9th in Game 1.
Evan
And
Carter's catch against the Astros needs to be in there too, because I think that's one of those plays in a a long postseason of just amazing plays that if he doesn't make that catch in that game, they probably lose the game and they probably lose the series.
and Leclerc has a drug addiction as a
You think
result.
so?
Man,
Oh, you say, yeah, I get you, I get you.
Leclerc had some close saves
I always
in that
feel bad for
postseason.
him in the ALCS when he clinched
Yeah.
and he goes to the ground with his hands up and everybody just runs past him and then he's like, oh, okay, I'll come over there. The crazy thing about Leclerc, he's the only guy that ties back to the 2010 through 2016 run. He was on the roster in 2015 and 2016.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
When you talk about the Astros, I was going to say this is actually year 10 of their dynasty
It really
because
is.
2010 was the year you and I talked extensively about Adrian Beltre, because that was the year I was telling you, they kind of struggled midway. Houston had this big lead. They had just moved over into the AL.
Yep.
They had this young talent. They were kind of surprising everybody. And then all I told you was, hey, if the Rangers just keep winning series after the All-Star break, I think they'll be able to catch up to the Astros. And sure enough, they kept winning 2 out of 3. And then Adrian Beltre kept just hammering shots to will that he should have probably been an MVP in 2015.
That's what I'm doing too. I'm hammering shots.
Yeah.
You're right. I think he finished third or fourth in the voting. But yeah, I mean, especially from August on, dude, he put the team on his back. I think I'm going off top, man. I think he hit for like a 400 clip. It was one of the best. In fact, and the only reason I remember all that is, well, I'm a big Adrian Beltre fan, but also there was an article on ESPN at the beginning of the year. It was like, some of the best forgotten stretches, and his was listed because of that.
Like Hall of Famer. I'm so happy he's in the Hall of Fame. Going back to Willie Mays, the actual topic of this portion of the show, 24-time All-Star. His only World Series win was the 54 series for the New York Giants.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they were the underdog. They played the Cleveland Indians that series, and they won 111 games, which was a record for the AL at that point. The 98 Yankees and 01 Mariners eventually broke that. But they swept them, and then they didn't make it back again until like in the early 60s. And then they lost to the Yankees in that one, I think 62.
Yeah.
And then he made a third trip to the World Series, but it was his last year when he was a lot of fans remember vividly of Willie Mays when he was not that good anymore. His last year was 73. He would have been 42 at this point with the Mets. This was not the amazing Mets of 69. This wasn't really a good Mets team either. I think they won 83, 84 games. Yogi Berra was their manager. But they ended up upsetting the Reds in the NLCS, making the World Series. He contributed a little bit in the NLCS and the World Series, but I mean, he was 42. He was well past his prime. There was a lot of hoopla at him going back to New York from San Francisco, and he actually had a pretty decent 72 season. But I mean, he was definitely a shell of his former self in that season. But a lot of people, I remember as a kid when I was watching video clips of him, they always talk about he always just looked old to me.
Yeah,
because they would always reference his last year with the Mets, which is kind of sad because this guy hit 660 home runs. He's the godfather of one of the greatest players of all time, Barry Bonds, who was kind of, when I was researching Willie Mays, the thing that stood out to me was not his accolades, not the "Say Hey Kid" moniker. It's the fact that him and his godson are basically the same person, in the sense that they kind of kept to themselves and the media did not like them for that. And it kind of affected him in the Hall of Fame voting. Whereas Willie Mays got in, he didn't get in 100%, which you think the "Say Hey Kid" 5-tool player, guy that can do it all, should be 100% legit in. And there was like 23 votes.
Well,
from being
and we have that stupid thing with baseball, like this whole idea that only nobody should get 100%, and and I'll say this: biggest, biggest Nolan Ryan fan, but the fact that Nolan Ryan got in with a vote like 99% and got more than Willie Mays, that blows my mind. I mean, Willie Mays for 30 years was the greatest living baseball player to play. And speaking of his godson, I don't give a crap about PEDs. Barry Bonds has now ascended to the greatest baseball player alive. Period. I don't even want to discuss. I mean, I will with you, but you know what I mean. If you're going to come at me with PED, I don't give a crap. That is the most holier than now BS belief that steroid users are somehow tainted. No, they're not. They are still great baseball players.
steroids don't help you hit a baseball. I don't care how big Barry Bonds' head grew after 2000. He was already a Hall of Famer before the new millennia hit.
Well, and that's the other thing with him. You're 100% right there. Okay, take his Giant seasons away. Don't count him. He's still a Hall of Famer. If he'd have retired the day he signed with the Giants, he's still a Hall of Famer. Period.
At 30 years old.
At 30 years old.
Had won 2 or 3 MVPs already with the Pirates team that already are penny pinchers with their payroll. And they were able to build a team that made it to 3 straight NLCS with Bobby Bonilla and Andy Van Slyke. And they had a really talented lineup. And one of the prettier looking uniforms, too, I might add. But yeah, he should have been a Hall of Famer by the time he was 30. And I feel he should be. And I think I've told you this. He was my favorite player growing up. I loved Juan Gonzalez as a local guy, but I just love Barry Bonds' swing. I know most of the other kids love Ken Griffey Jr. because he had the hat. And a lot of experts loved the way he swung. He was picture perfect, apparently. I just love the way Barry Bonds played. I don't know. I just something about it. I love the Giant uniforms. I love the Bay Area. I've never been to San Francisco. I've always wanted to go. Maybe in the future I'll go. Yeah, he's always been I loved how he choked on the bat a little bit. When I used to play with my friends growing up, I would do the same thing. I kind of felt like you had more of a control of the bat. Willie Mays had that unique batting stance. It was more wide than Bonds, his legs, but what he did was he had his thumb out all the time.
Yep.
And it kind of reminded me of Gary Sheffield and Andres Galarraga from I grew up in the 90s, so I'm going to reference 90s athletes, where they had that weird batting stance, but it was more of like a winding batting stance where they would swing into the perfect position to hit a ball. And all those players, they're very consistent in what they're saying. It gives them more power.
Yep.
Or they feel it gives them more power. And I think for Willie Mays, having the loose grip on the bat while he's he's in his stance with the wide leg stance. I really think that was part of his routine to be comfortable. And then when the ball is thrown, he knows the location, he knows what kind of pitch. Then he gets into the proper batting stance, and then he has more power. I think Gary Sheffield had the quickest hands in baseball.
That's a good point right there. People don't realize that about hands. There's a thing where when you're playing baseball, you get told throw your hands at the ball, and the idea is if you throw your hands and you're loose, like you said, in the wrist, it creates that whip. And so for everybody who looks at baseball and they think it's your arms, it's your chest. No, it's your hips, your legs, your wrist. If all that works together, that's why Jose Altuve can friggin' kill a baseball. It's why Evan Carter can hit a baseball far. It's why Mike Schmidt. Look at Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt, if you saw him out on the street back in 1982, you didn't look at him and think, oh, my God, that's a baseball player. You're like, dude's got a porn stash. He's cool.
Mike Schmidt, Phillies third baseman, I believe.
Yes, third baseman.
Pretty slender, but hit over 500 home runs, won a World Series, one of the greatest players of his generation. Very slender, had the stash, as you mentioned. But
Roger Maris, dude, was just a regular old guy. Mickey Mantle, and please understand, I'm not saying he's going to have this career, but I will tell you, if he stays healthy, which is funny because Mickey Mantle didn't.
Well, to his Mantle's defense, if it was modern healthcare,
yeah,
he would have shattered all the records.
He tore his knee up early because Joe DiMaggio, who had lost all of his range in the World Series, though, as Mickey Mantle's famously going after a ball, Joe DiMaggio out of nowhere says, "I got it." And Mantle, being Mantle, even though he was center field, Mantle being Mantle, held up because deference to it's the great Joe DiMaggio, and he stepped into a sprinkler hole, tore his knee up. And you're right. Nowadays, he'd have surgery. He'd have been back in 6 months. He never was the same. Still amazing. I think Wyatt Langford could be that. Wyatt Langford looks the most like Mickey Mantle out of any player since Mickey Mantle. He doesn't look strong, but he is. He doesn't look fast, but he is. And going back to Barry Bonds, I always loved the bat waggle, because when Bonds was going good, that waggle got real fierce, and then it got quiet. And people don't understand. Your stance doesn't matter. Mickey Tettleton had a weird stance. Julio Franco had a weird stance. Barry Bonds had a weird stance. Gary Sheffield corkscrewed. But watch when the ball was being thrown, they all did the same thing. They went into launch. Arms fell back. Yep. Leg went forward. And then, as we said, throw your hands at the ball, the bat will follow. Man, Mickey Mantle had played he had played long enough ago when I was a kid that he was a legend, but he played sooner that where like my dad and people like that saw him in his prime and could regale me with the stories of Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays and, all those players. And Willie Mays, there was always something mythical to him. And I think it was because he was quiet. Mickey Mantle was the slap you on the back, buy you a beer, tell you stories. There's the famous story about when Yankees old timer day was there, and they, all the players had come to play an old timers game, and they asked each player what their favorite memory of Yankee Stadium was. And, I'm just naming names, Whitey Ford throwing a one-hit shutout in the World Series, Hank Bauer hitting 2 home runs in the World Series. And Mickey Mantle's like, I once got a blowjob from this hot chick in the dugout. That was Mickey Mantle, and that worked for him. Willie Mays was like, I guess Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson to me always they just played with class, if that makes sense. And I'm not saying Mickey, but you know what I mean? They were like Joe DiMaggio. They were gods among men.
Yeah. Yeah, Mantle was like a bro, but the thing everybody...
That's the best way to describe it.
The thing everybody loved about Mantle, which is very American, was he just hustled. He rolled up his sleeves. He got in the trenches. He got in the dirt. And he was a superstar, but played like a scrappy utility player. And he was just very hard working. And that really endeared him to a lot of people, especially in that tough market that is the New York Yankee market. He was eternally beloved, just like with Jeter. I still remember when Jeter went 0 for 30 something back in the day in the 2000s. I can't remember what year it was. He went up to bat, and the only time I've ever recalled something as shocking was when Randall Cunningham wore a Cowboy uniform
and was cheered.
He was encouraged by the Yankees. The fans weren't even booing. They were just like, "Hey, come on, Jeter, you got this." And this is a tough crowd. I respect the fans. They're very passionate. I always respect passionate fans, but at that point, you just kind of feel like they kind of have a right to boo, and they didn't boo. They just loved Derek Jeter. So I feel like the same thing goes with Mickey Mantle too. But yeah, Mickey Mantle had a relatively short career. He lost a home run chase with Roger Maris
because of injury. Well, because of a bad flu shot, actually. I think it was a flu shot. He got a shot and it infected on his hip. By the way, watch the movie 61, folks.
It was great.
I now think I'm going to watch that tonight when I'm eating my drunk soup. And if you want to know what drunk soup is, it's homemade soup that I eat when I'm drunk. It's really that simple. But I think I'm going to watch 61 because it's one of my favorite baseball movies. Billy Crystal directed it back in 2000, 2001. I can't remember the year. Some of the CGI, because they CGI old Yankee Stadium, it just it's okay. Just get past it. It's not that big part of the movie, but it's a great movie. Thomas Jane played Mickey Mantle. Perfect. Barry Pepper played Roger Maris. Absolutely perfect. The cast is perfect. But yeah, again, going back to Willie Mays, going back to Mickey Mantle, going back to the guys when I was a kid, Nolan Ryan, Mike Schmidt, Pete Rose, all those, I don't feel that people, and maybe I'm just being adult, maybe there are kids that are just like we were, but it doesn't feel like it today, does it?
Well, baseball has declined.
Well, I mean, just in sports in general, like you don't hear people like, "Oh, Dak's my hero," or like even
it has to be like a very eccentric, bombastic individual, like internationally it's different because there's a hero worship for Lionel Messi, the soccer star, the global soccer star from Argentina. I'm trying to think of someone currently to make this
Patrick
point.
Mahomes, maybe.
Mahomes, maybe, because NFL. So, football, NFL will be a good analogy here. But the guys that kids worship, be like him, sneakerhead. They're imitating his haircut.
Because it didn't feel like Tom Brady was actually worshipped like that, did it?
Now I hear it more, but before it was a lot of hate. And then now, after he won his championship with the Buccaneers, you see, because he got super drunk at the parade. People are like, "Oh, that's awesome! I want him to win 10 now because he got the 7 when he with the Buccaneers."
Yeah,
I really think that there was over time, you grow to appreciate the person you've been booing for 20 years, and I think that's what happened with Tom Brady.
Well, and that's one of the things that I think I always like why our friendship connected was I literally remember like the first time we're kind of sussing each other out, and I'm like, we're like, the Eagles
sussing each other out.
Yes, because when you meet somebody that says I know sports, you got to test them. You and I have talked about that. I get so annoyed when people are like, "You think Cowboys and Eagles are playing in the Super Bowl this year?" But I remember us talking about, man, screw the Eagles. You know what though? Randall Cunningham was kind of awesome, dude. Andy Reid's kind of cool too, and that's where we connected because you and I could hate the Eagles but respect the players.
Yeah,
and we talked about that in the Washington top 5 rivals. I hated the Washington Redskins because they beat Dallas, but boy, when they played anybody else, they were fun to watch. Yeah. It was a joy to watch them. And I've told you this many times. One of my favorite books of all time is a book about Bill Walsh, Bill Parcells, and Joe Gibbs winning in the NFL in the 80s. All 3 of them would be considered Cowboy rivals. I love that book because you got to respect those guys. And I think maybe that's where it is now, where all you see is people just trash. I hate the other team. It's like, there's no fun in that. Yeah, you want to beat them, but to me, I want all the teams that my teams beat to be great teams so that when my team beats them, it feels like they accomplished something, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that definitely makes sense. I don't want my team to win. Okay, I'm contradicting myself because I already said the Cowboys had a prime opportunity to win 2 championships in 2022 and 2023 because the competition in the NFC was down. Having said that, the 2011 Mavericks winning the NBA championship was very sweet because they beat some really good competition. They beat the Lakers, who won 2 championships the years before. They were going for a 3-peat and got swept by the Mavericks. The Mavericks went to Oklahoma City, who was technically the better team, won 5 close games, or won a 5-game series. All the games were close, except for the first one where Oklahoma blew us out. And then Miami with the super team, LeBron, Bosh, Wade, and the triplets, they lost in 6 games to the Mavericks. So that was a very sweet win, and that's kind of the reason why I'm not really mad the Mavericks lost this year.
Oh, no, not at all.
Because I can still go back and think about that 2011 team. And
we've talked about this before. Outside of the NFL, now I don't want the Mavs to go to 3 straight NBA finals and lose, or over their next 5 times they make the NBA finals and how many years they lose. But outside of football, once your team gets at least that first one, Everything else is like, okay, if they win, great. Awesome. If they don't, I still got the one. And basketball, I totally enjoyed this year. You and I both knew they were going to lose to the Celtics. I mean, it would have, there was not, I think we both did our, Mavs and 7. But yeah, you knew 5 minutes in, like, yeah, this is just not, Boston is Boston this year. That, this is the culmination of 7 years. The Mavericks, this is the culmination of half a season. Now, we'll see if they're going to do what they did 2 years ago and backslide, or will this be the launching pad for them? But like the Stars, I'm still content with the Stars. Now, they have made 2 straight Western Conference Finals and lost. I would like to see the next step next year, but I'm still perfectly fine with, hey, they're just a really good team that consistently makes the playoffs, because I've told you from day one, that's all I really want. I want teams that, outside of football, again, it's different, but in the other sports, I just want to be good consistently.
Yeah, and with the Dallas Stars, last season they were not the favorites. They kind of had a tough 7-game series against Seattle, the Kraken, and they got through. Vegas just had a top to bottom. There was no weaknesses. They just ran into the wrong team.
And sad thing is, I think Dallas might have beat a better Golden Knights team this year than they lost to last year. But again, a game 7. And I think that's the thing Dallas has to avoid next year. You cannot get caught in long playoff series in the first 2 rounds. You need to get out of them, each one of those, in 6 at the very most. And then in the Western Conference Finals, you can go, okay, if we go 7, we go 7.
Yeah. I agree with you. Even as an 8 seed, the no Golden Knights still had most of their talent back from the Cup winning team the prior season. It was a great accomplishment to beat them. It was a great accomplishment to beat the Avalanche, a really good team that was healthy. What the problem with the Mavericks, the Stars, was Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid are the 2 best players in the world. Edmonton doesn't really have the defensive capabilities, but they can do it in stretches, and that's exactly what they did to the Stars. But they've been together for so long. This is the continuity. This Stars team, I know they have Jamie Benn, and they have a core group of players, but the best players are Robertson, Hintz. There's some guys that haven't really been together long enough, as long as Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. And I really do think that was the difference, just like with the Mavericks in the NBA Finals. Just continuity. Just go into next season. Keep all your best players together. Form a bond. Form a team essentially. And I think that'll carry over. And I think the Dallas Stars are in really good shape going into next season. They just need to keep the continuity, just like with the Mavericks. Keep the continuity. And right now, this is the best time in DFW sports. And I think you agree with that. It's just really a good time. I've been very happy. All my teams have been going on deep runs, except for the Cowboys.
And yet they've somehow been the most consistent, at least, to make the playoffs over the last few years. Next offseason, I kind of want to go a little bit more random with our look backs. And I think one of them would be in one show, not over the whole season, top 5 Dallas-Fort Worth sports seasons, and talk about, because there's some that'll surprise you. Now, we might have to make the rule that we start from like 94, because the Mavericks didn't come in till 80, the Stars didn't come in till 94, Dallas Burn didn't come in till 94. Now FC Dallas. We might have some honorable mention, like
I like that you reference Dallas Burn / FC Dallas.
I love the Dallas.
I already know what season you're about to reference.
What?
I think it was 2011.
Yes. Well, they're FC Dallas. That right now. Yeah, you're right. That's a good debate, because a major team won a champion that year.
Yep.
You could make the case that was a better year because 3 teams made a championship: FC Dallas, Dallas, and Texas. But the Cowboys didn't make playoffs, so that really hurts. But you can also go back to like a year of like 81, 82, where the Mavericks are terrible, the Cowboys are good, but then the Dallas Sidekicks are winning indoor league titles. Well, what's that matter?
Tattoo.
Yeah, the Dallas Sidekicks in the 80s were a friggin' big deal in Dallas because there wasn't anything else in the spring. I mean, you didn't have the Stars yet. The Mavericks were terrible. The Rangers were, they were pretty uniforms, and that's about it.
But remember, there's also only 3 major networks still at this time.
Yeah. And that was where, indoor soccer back then was like arena football. You got enough of the real sport, but you got a lot of scoring in it.
Entertainment was much different in the 80s than it is now. And people nowadays that grew up in the internet age, they will not understand that. They will not understand how cable TV was so sought after, but then they'll, get wide-eyed when they realize how much cable TV cost in the 80s. It was a privilege to have HBO. That's hoity-toity first class. Nowadays I just bum your subscription for HBO Max. I
thought that was Pornhub.
Oh yeah, that Max. Skinner.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
I don't know. Moving on. So anyway, yeah, entertainment was much different back then than it is today. So there was a great value in a spring sport entertainment of some sort.
That played on local TV. I think it was on Channel 11.
Which was CBS was one of the 3 major networks at the time. CBS, NBC.
Well, actually, Channel 11 back then was an independent station. Channel 11 wasn't CBS back then.
ABC. There we go.
Yeah, ABC. Back then,
Fox wasn't a thing until 87.
Yeah, 87. But yeah, Channel 11 was almost a super station. Yeah. The Rangers played there. Like 90% of their games were on there. The sidekicks were on there. I can still remember, and I lived in East Texas a couple hours away, but we got the Dallas Morning News, and I can remember seeing, like, you got a 4-pack to go see the sidekicks. You got 4 tickets, 4 drinks, 4 hot dogs for like $20 total, folks. It was, that's why arena football and all those have struggled now, not because they're any different, but 20 years ago, you didn't have many sports options. Now, just like today, we've got all the baseball games. You got all the soccer tournaments all over because you got Euro, you've got the whatever the CONCACAF bastardize and just throws in random teams and calls it a tournament. You have that, which is really fun. And then you've got like the Olympics coming up. But like there's a reason why the Olympics have died. We're not forced to watch them. In 1984 at 2 a.m, my only choice was to watch the Olympics or Benny Hill. Benny Hill was funny, though. So, yeah, when people want to talk about how sports in general have fallen, I think a lot of it is just people have more options.
Yeah, they have more options. It's just like the menu discussion. So you go to Cheesecake Factory. I'm just thinking of like local examples. Cheesecake Factory versus Katie Trail. Katie Trail, their menu is 2 sides. You look at the front side, you see it in options, you see the back side.
Yep.
Cheesecake Factory, it's almost like they're giving you a big booklet. And you have all these options you're going through. It's much easier to be entertained with the Katie Trail option.
Yep.
Than it is with the cheesecake option. I'm still flipping pages, by the way.
Do you like the Cheesecake Factory?
Yeah, I think some of their cheesecakes are overrated, but
I don't think I've ever actually ate there. I know a couple times with the group we used to hang out, we went there for drinks, but you never wanted to eat to start the drinks.
So you go there with the decision. Are you going to go home after, or are you going to go somewhere else? Because if you go somewhere else, share a meal. If you go home, just order the meal and just take leftovers, because one meal is essentially 2 to 3 meals. They give you large servings. So that is the one thing I do like about Cheesecake Factory. But I will say some of their cheesecakes are very overrated.
I'm not a big cheesecake guy. I'll tell you, we ate there this week and I showed you pictures. A place that kind of does in between is Ozona Bar and Grill. Mm-hmm. It's up at the very end, the north end of Uptown, right when you're getting into Greenville, and you go about 2 more blocks and you get into Lower Greenville, and then you kind of get into Uptown. And they have a not as big as Cheesecake Factory menu, but it's bigger because they kind of have a meals across Texas. Like you can get a West Texas meal and eat, like that kind of stuff. And that was the first time I've eaten there in probably 15 years. It was really, really good. I don't know why we're doing reviews on restaurants right now. Speaking of the soccer, are you watching any of the tournaments?
So right now, the 2024 Euros, which is the biggest club tournament around the world, it's just European club teams like your Bayern Munich's, your Manchester United's, all of them. Oh no, wait, no, Euros are a country.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Euros are now. I
So
was
this is
letting you figure that one out
yeah.
yourself.
So yeah, I was thinking of UEFA.
Yes.
Sorry. So UEFA is the biggest club level tournament. Euros are the second biggest country level tournaments to the actual World Cup, which will take place in 2026 in North America. So you and I will be looking for tickets.
Oh yeah, definitely want to go.
This is held in Germany, and yeah, I've watched a few of the games. They're because it kind of gives me an idea of what might happen in 2 years. I know Italy won 4 years ago, and they barely got into the round of 16. They tied Croatia today, which was kind of a bit of a shock because Croatia was up until late in the game, and then Italy scored a goal to tie it. Now Croatia, a really heavy favorite, is hoping that they can get in. They could be one of the 4 third place finishers that gets an invite into the final 16. So a little bit of drama there. I still think, I mean, if I had a gun to my head and had to make a decision, I'd probably go with the hometown Germany team or England. They're just youthful. Well, right now they were youthful 6 years ago. Now they're seasoned veterans. They're a team that can actually contend for a World Cup championship. So I think they could maybe win the Euros. So to me, they're the favorite. But I know other pundits would say maybe a Spain or the Netherlands, who are also very young right now, could win. So, but yeah, they have been entertaining.
And the U.S. is in the Copa America. They won yesterday against Bolivia 2-0. And if you know anything about soccer, if you think we overanalyze, go watch a soccer after a game or a football after a game, and the team will win 2-0. And the announcers just talk about how they look like trash. Like, geez, they were terrible. This was one of the better USA appearances, especially after a couple of weeks ago, Colombia just absolutely destroyed them. But then they answered back with a draw against a Brazil team that was playing a lot of their starters. And I think, just like you say with Euro, I think the Copa America, I don't think the U.S. has to win it by any stretch, but I think with them having an Argentina possibly at some point, a Mexico, and I know Mexico probably right now I would say is a step behind the United States, but I do think you can get an idea of what the United States is going to do over the next 2 years to get to the World Cup. And I think if you know anything about the team, the biggest issue is they've got to find creativity. Like I know it works. I know it's a fun story, and I know what's his name. Klinsmann gets a lot of crap for when he was here, but he was trying to get the United States out of this. Oh, they're the underdog, plucky team, and they play safe for 90 minutes, and then they hope to score a goal in +2, and like they've done for so many times. And he's trying to find them to be like, hey, let's be aggressive. Let's score early and stuff like that. And while his time didn't work, as far as I still don't understand why he was fired, to be honest with you, but I do think at least it led to like Christian Pulisic and players like that, to where the United States is actually trying to find creativity. I just don't know if they will.
I don't know. This has been their identity for as long as I've been watching. They're just not. It's just not a prioritized sport in this country. So this is the result you get. I mean, if this was a sport that was prioritized like basketball or football, you'd get 6'8" freaks like LeBron playing soccer. But instead we have, generic, heady gym rats that can keep it competitive, but that's the extent of it. So round of 16 is kind of our ceiling. 2002 was just kind of a lucky year, maybe because it was in Seoul, Korea, or what? I don't know. But
I think that was just a really good squad that was playing well. And that goes to show you, when you get those moments, you've got to take advantage. And yes, I know they played Germany, and I know there was a couple calls that went against them, but you had them in the moment. That's the difference in being the plucky team that sometimes makes it to the round of 16 and to be a team that consistently makes the round of 16 and sometimes makes the round of 8.
Yeah, and to the U.S., I mean, they played Oliver Kahn, who was an all-world goaltender in the early 2000s. He didn't allow a single goal to remember, from what I remember, until the World Cup. I think he might have allowed a couple in the group stages, but I don't think he's allowed another goal until the World Cup final against Brazil. So yeah, it was a bad matchup. It was great they got to the Elite Eight, the final 8 teams, but the quarterfinals, so to speak. But yeah, that team far exceeded expectations.
Yeah, that was a fun year. I was in college.
Me too.
My roommate and I would wake up early. You know, we made the whole thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember. There was a local pizza place in Commerce. I think they're closed now, but they opened up between midnight and 4 a.m. So you could order pizza. I mean, we did the whole thing, and it was in the summer. I was working where I was working. I worked the perfect shift where I went to work at like 4 p.m. and got off at 11. So I would sleep all morning, get up, go to work. And then my roommate and I would watch all the World Cup games. I think they started at 11 or 12, and the U.S. usually played about 2 in the morning. That was a blast. I always liked soccer and I always followed it, but that's the moment that I really got into to the World Cup and the U.S. men's national team and started watching them. Now, I will admit, over the last 10 years, I don't watch all the games that don't matter anymore. I used to watch all the friendlies. Now I'm like, because to be honest with you, again, 9 times out of 10, the United States are boring. Even when they win, it's that plucky, and I'm tired of plucky. We've got too many talented players. There should never have been a squad where you've got the likes of Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan and even Bradley. And I know Bradley took a lot of crap, but that group, there was no reason why they were plucky. They should have been creative. They should have been fun. And I do think that when they're playing well, this iteration of the USA team can be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but again, it goes back to the point I was making that the best talent are not going to soccer; they're going to go to other sports, higher paid, and they don't want to take the risk of having to go overseas to make the money. They're just going to stay local.
Yeah,
and,
that's a good point.
And I always think the U.S. men's soccer is going to always have that plateau. U.S. women's soccer might be starting to go to that route too.
Well, they're just going through that route because other teams are catching up to them. That's the big thing right there. And I don't care how good you are, eventually you get caught flat-footed. You cannot always be ahead of everybody. That's just how it works. That's why even great soccer nations have step-back years. I mean, even Italy, when they won the Euro last time, that was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere. I mean, Italy had just had one of the worst World Cups they'd ever had. They had been kind of floundering for 5 or 6 years. I mean, and I think the U.S. women's soccer team is figuring it out. I will say, though, I do think that the United States has become big enough and especially more diversified in the soccer-loving nations that live here, that there are still plenty of people that there's talent that can make the United States a top 5 soccer nation.
I mean, that would be great. I just don't see it ever happening in my lifetime. I say that, but in the NBA, 2 of the best players are not from America. So maybe it could happen.
And also I will say this, you've got that factor where less kids are playing American football.
Because of CTE?
CTE, just injuries in general, man. And I know you can get injured in soccer, but throwing your body at another body from the time you're 10 years old till you're 18, you're going to accrue some injuries. And I just think, and again, also our nation's diversifying as far as the demographics. Yeah. More people. Look at how many players now. In fact, one of them just flipped from the United States back to Mexico. Look at how many players now for the U.S. has to make that decision. And for people that go, well, yeah, immigration. Dude, that's how it is in Euro soccer. Yeah. England will have guys that I'm going to go Germany or England, and you get to declare once, and once you do, you can play a game with a country and then declare for another, and you get to acknowledge that. That's just how it works. But I think there could be a day, but it's got to be going back to it's got to be more than plucky. It's got to be a United States soccer team that actually grabs the nation. And even 02 didn't, but part of that's because of when the games were played. And that also is always going to hurt. We'll see with the next World Cup, with it being in America, where games are played from noon to 7 p.m. in the summer, in the we'll see if that finally helps grab, because there was a growth from the 94 World Cup.
Well, yeah, because the U.S. advanced to the round of 16, so that was a big help.
Well, it also was in the United States. That was my point.
That
like people went, like I remember South Korea was here in Dallas, and they had a huge fan base because they were a fun team to watch. Yeah, they were plucky, but they were also quick. They were athletic. They were that type of soccer team that annoys great teams, and they were fun to root for. And so I do think the 94 World Cup, with the United States advancing and the games being in America, I do think that will help another growth. And I still contend there will be a day that eventually the Olympics and the World Cups are just played in America all the time, because that we're still the only country that has that type of infrastructure to do that, and to do it to where the World Cup can be played in America and 90% of America won't even be bothered by it.
Great point on bringing up the World Cup in 94, because kudos to the American fans, because we put up with the worst uniforms of all time. Those were terrible. Those were terrible American uniforms, and I hate saying that. The 90s were just one of the worst decades as far as fashion goes. You thought the 80s would have been terrible, but the 90s were really, really bad. And I'm glad we're past that now.
All right, hang on. Sorry, dealing with house stuff again. Let's see. I think we're almost done for that. Oh, by the way, real quick, Oilers and Panthers, 1-0 1-1 here with 3:48 left in the first. I've been watching it on ESPN. This game is wide open.
1-1 now.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say, 1-1. Florida scored early. The Oilers answered right away, like almost immediately, with a Janmark, former Dallas Star, or former Dallas Star system, or former something with the Dallas Star. I just reading that about that today. I can't remember what it was. Hockey's weird, man, with that kind of crap, because they can, like, it's not quite like minor. It's like minor league, but in minor league, if you play for whatever team you want in the minor leagues and then you get drafted, that'd be kind of cool if baseball did that way. But anyway, this is a very wide open game so far. Both teams are just shooting. Usually game sevens are either really super tight, like 1-0, or they go crazy like 5-4. I kind of feel like this might be a 5-4 game.
I got a big hockey news right now. The Bruins trade Linus Ullmark to the Senators.
Yeah, that was I heard rumblings of that on my little NHL daily thing, and you hear that and you think, okay, it'll probably be a month from now. The Senators are trying to establish and become a viable franchise again.
I mean, Linus Ullmark, like him and Swayman were like the best goalie duo in hockey for a few years there, and I guess Boston felt they needed more offensive pop, because he is one of the best goaltenders in the world, and they just traded him. So they must have gotten a lot in return.
Well, I think Boston is also getting caught. And again, where if Dallas next year kind of fizzles out in the Western Conference, maybe you start saying the same thing about them.
Yeah.
But Boston also has last year's,
Ullmark won the Vezina last year.
Yes. But they lost in the first round last year. And so even this year, it felt like I think the Bruins are doing what we talked about with the Cowboys earlier. They're just trying to change things up.
Yeah.
Maybe the chemistry in the locker room, fair or not, that's what happens when you don't exceed expectations. Even when you're having really good seasons, you don't exceed expectations.
Yeah.
But on that note, Inter Noe.
Yes, sir.
I'm just gonna keep playing that all the time.
Okay, so I see the sideline banner like waving a little bit behind you.
That's the fan. I have a fan. I've got two fans. So today Well, you know me, I'm hot natured. To save electricity, I do the free nights and all. But also today, because we were getting rid of popcorn on the ceiling, that means you got to ventilate. So we had to open the doors and turn the AC off. So at one point, right before the show started, we were like at 84 degrees in the house. So I've got 2 fans on me. I've got the AC going. I have all that fun stuff. But anyway, anything else you want to add?
Nah, man. I mean, I think we covered everything: the Rangers, Stanley Cup, Mavericks, Willie Mays. Yeah, I think we're good, man. Can't wait to do this again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll have a couple weeks. We might have a live baseball show next week. I'm not sure yet. I haven't talked to Ryan. Texas 2 Seam will be showing up this week. He's a little late. Want to remind everybody, if you want to have a question, comment, or thought, of course, you can always go into our chat, but you can also email the show, odtcshow@gmail.com. Our Patreon, go to patreon.com/OutDrank The Coverage. Right now, we've got the San Francisco Top Rivals show up there unedited.
23,000 people.
Yeah, that's on YouTube. 23,000 people have watched that one. Almost 24 or over 24,000 watched the Green Bay one. So we've really enjoyed those numbers. I mean, we've said it before. We've gotten more numbers and we've gotten more subscribers in this off season than we did in season last year. And we had a great start to our in season last year. So we do appreciate all that. Again, you can find us at YouTube. Just type in L4 Media Company. On Patreon, just go to patreon.com/OutDrank The Coverage. Email us, odtcshow@gmail.com. Until next time, he's intern Noe the Pro. I'm Terry the Ho.